In this presentation, I look at the Gematria encryption associated with the Greek word cosmos. In particular, I examine the way it's used at the beginning of St. John's Gospel. The word cosmos means good order, perfect arrangement, regularity, or decency. And from this, it's used to describe the world, because the world was thought of as a harmonious body. Simultaneously, it was used for the universe, because the universe was also thought to be composed along regular and well-ordered lines. By Gematria, the value of the word is 600, and it comes from exactly 6 letters. So it's strongly associated with the number 6. This can be represented as a cube of sides 6, or 600, but the proportions are the same. Now, this is a particularly important figure in geometry because the volume is equal to the surface area. 6 by 6 by 6 is 216, either cubic units for the volume or square units for the surface area. No other cube has this property. It's partly because a cube is a 6-sided figure. It also has the property that it can be made up from the sum of the 3rd, 4th and 5th cubes. 3 cubed plus 4 cubed plus 5 cubed equals 6 cubed. And it thus embodies the 3-4-5 ratio of the Pythagorean triangle. Now, the two words megas cosmos have a Gematria value of 849, which is significant because it is 600 times the square root of 2. And on the cube, 849 marks the diagonal of any face. The two words mikros cosmos, microcosm, have a value of 1040, which is 600 times the square root of 3. And on the cube, this will mark any corner-to-corner diagonal in 3 dimensions. Now, one thing which devolves from this figure is a right-angled isosceles triangle, 2 sides of 600 and the hypotenuse of 849. Now, the perimeter of this triangle is 2049. This gives an important Gematria valuation for the words meaning the square in Greek, to tetragonon. But that's also used for the builder's square. Obviously, this is a prime tool of any architect, whether it's an architect of the cosmos or an architect of everyday buildings. The letter values of tetragonon are there. However, an even more important triangle is that made from one side, one face diagonal and one corner-to-corner diagonal. And this has a perimeter of 2488. Now, this is an extremely important cosmic number. By Gematria, it gives the valuation of the words cosmos esti logos Kyriou. The cosmos is the word of the Lord. Simultaneously, it gives us morphe to Kyriou, the form of the Lord. And a third one is Jesus Kyrios Kosmou, Jesus, Lord of the cosmos. Now, St. John seems to have picked up on this in his Gospel. In the first chapter, verse 10, he writes, "He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not." So that's 3 repetitions of the words cosmos, or O Cosmos. Now what's interesting is in the very next sentence, chapter verse 11, he writes Eis ta idia elthen kai oi idioi auton u paralavan. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. And the value of those words is 2,488. Exactly. So John seems to have been playing on this cosmic figure in the composition of his Gospel. Now, if we put together verses 10 and 11, find that the values are 7538 for verse 10 and 2488 for 11, making a grand total of 10,026. This is a number divisible by the number of creation, 6, and it suggests a six-fold figure of geometry, such as a hexagram or six-pointed star. This is suitable because it has the two triangles point to the macrocosm and the microcosm. Now the sides of this star will measure 1671, and that is extremely appropriate because we find that microcosmos 840 and macrocosmos 831 add together to make 1671. So the star unites the microcosm and the macrocosm in one figure. This is like the microcosmic man representing the whole of the macrocosm. Now, if we focus on the 10th verse of John's Gospel, observant people might have noticed that the word dia had a final letter, the alpha, in italic script. And the reason for that is it is a slightly contested letter in this verse because when written originally, it comes as D or delta iota, and then there's an apostrophe. It looks like an apostrophe. It actually serves as an apostrophe, although technically it is a diacritical mark called an apocoptic form. And this shows that when dia comes before another word starting with a vowel, dia auto, in spoken Greek, the alpha would have been elided, so it effectively disappears, like have not becomes haven't in English. So it is usually written, and you will see it most times in the New Testament written delta iota and then the apocoptic mark, the apostrophe, there. But taken as written, we find it is one less than before, so that gives a value of 7537. Now this is not critical, but it just makes the next calculation a little bit more accurate. 7537 as the circumference of a circle exactly circumscribes a square of perimeter 6786. Those who are familiar with cosmic numbers will recognize this, especially when it is the circumference of a circle, because the diameter of the circle will be 2160. And this measures the size of the moon in miles. The circumference is 6,786 miles, the diameter 2,160. So the 10th verse encodes the size of the moon. Returning to the figure of 2488, if we add a 0, we make a circle of circumference 24,880. This has a diameter of 7,920, which those familiar with cosmological measures will know is the measure of the Earth in miles. At the same time, a circle of 2,488 circumference will exactly hold the inscribed figure of a hexagram with a total length of 4,116. This is the value of Uranos, meaning heaven or the heavens, which is rather suitable. One thing I should point out is that the way Uranos is counted is by a technique sometimes called filling or plenitude, milui in Hebrew, which means that you use the names of each letter. So, for example, the first letter of Uranos is Omicron, and you count that as Omicron, Mi, Iota, Kappa, Rho, Omicron, Ni. So that's 360 for this counts as the first letter of Uranos. It's an interesting possibility. Another very important number which comes out of this is 3,168, which marks the perimeter of a square drawn around the cosmic circle. Now, 3,168 is one of the most important numbers in esoteric numerology. It's associated with the mystical city of Plato. It's associated with the layout of Glastonbury Abbey, and it's also very well known as the value of a certain person, deity, Kyrios Jesus Christos. Exactly the value of 3,168. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Now, this sentence obviously has the world 3 times. However, the grammar in Greek is slightly different. We have to cosmo, ho cosmos, and ho cosmos. And the values together combine to make 3,570. This is a number divisible by 3, and we find it's 1,190 by 3. And that is very, very important because 1,190 is the value of 8 in Greek, octo. So 3 times octo gives us 888. And Jesus has a value of 888. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Now, another reference to the world comes in the previous verse, which we know as, "That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world." Okay, so we have the world again, and here the grammar gives us ton cosmon. So now we have 4 references to the world and a total value of 4,440. It's a very neat round number, and obviously as a triple digit repeat, it's like 666 and many other numbers in the Bible, it is of great significance. We find, for example, by Gematria, it gives us the Church of Lord Jesus Christ, He Ecclesia tu Kyrio Jesu Christu. And it's also 888 times 5, 5 times the value of Jesus. This can be represented geometrically as a 5-pointed star with each side measuring 888. Now, the geometry of a pentacle is such that you can draw a pentagon around it by dividing its length by phi, or the golden section. So 4440 divided by 1.618 is 2,744. And this gives us an allied gematria target of the Church of Christ, Ecclesia to Christu, which is rather neat. Now, with 4,440 coming from 4 iterations of the world, obviously 1110 is a significant derivative, and we find here the value of Omikros Cosmos, the microcosm. And simultaneously it gives us the macrocosm, or Cosmos o Olos, the whole cosmos. A third reading is to Aetheros Melos, the music of the spheres. And this is an expression which comes from the Pythagorean theory of a harmonious universe that's held together by celestial music. With an additional 0, we find the names of 12 particularly relevant bodies: Ammon, Tauros, Didymoi, Karkinos, Leon, Parthenos, Chilai, Scorpios, Tuxutes, Agokeros, Idrikoos, Ichthys, known in English as Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So the great celestial circle, the 12 constellations, have the exact value of 11,100. We're definitely in a cosmic country here. And if you don't believe me, these are the values, how it all adds up. You can check it out if you want to. Now, in terms of geometry, the fourfold repetition of 1110 suggests a square with those sides. This square will exactly encompass a circle of 3487 circumference. Now, 3487 is interesting because it comprises a sum of 2368 and 1119. 2368 being the value of Jesus Christos, and 1119 being the value of Ioannes, or John. So a mystical union of Jesus Christ and John forms a circle within the cosmic square. On first hearing this, it might seem almost sacrilegious that John, a mere mortal, should be united with Jesus Christ. However, if this is John the Baptist, which it probably is, then there are people who think that John the Baptist might have been even a co-Messiah with Jesus. It was John who baptized Jesus and who announced his coming, and it is not beyond the bounds of possibility that they were a team. They were a pair who worked together originally. Later, John got downgraded and Jesus got upgraded because of historical factors. But to the original Christians, John might have had equal importance to Christ. That is that's one theory. One piece of evidence in favour of this hypothesis comes from the first verse of John's Gospel, where we find in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. Logos, or word. In Greek, the word Logos has a value of 373. So the threefold repetition of Logos gives us 1119, the value of Ioannes, or John. So it is a possibility that John was referring to someone called John in even the first verse of his Gospel. Now, what's really interesting is when we put together the circle and the square, because they sum to 7,927. This is absolutely gobsmacking in cosmological terms because it provides the exact equatorial diameter of the Earth. Now, the diameter of the Earth is generally considered to be 7,920 miles. However, there is an equatorial bulge. The Earth is fatter in the middle than it is around the top or any other part. And how accurate is this? Well, the best modern figure that NASA and people like, well, companies, organizations like that can come up with is 7,926.38. So 7927 is incredibly accurate for the time that John was writing. 100 AD is generally thought to be the case, or the ancient Greeks. This would seem to be a figure that was known perhaps in esoteric circles by the ancient Greeks. They did measure the world with a very high degree of accuracy, but this degree of accuracy, well, if it was known, it was a secret, and it was only revealed in encrypted form in places like the 9th and 10th verses of St. John's Gospel. If you found this video interesting, please click the like button and subscribe, and watch out for more videos on my channel. Thank you.